5 to go till Rita is here. The wonderful Jenna Clark is here as well. Looking forward to seeing her in about an hour's time with the front page, tomorrow's news tonight. In the meantime, two senators for the price of one. Throw in Matt Thistlethwaite in the middle and you have a conversation on television, one and all, with Amanda Stoker and with Holly Hughes. Now, there is a process question I want to get to on top of all of the obvious, which is a former upper house member of the New South Wales Parliament, Labor MP, has been found by ICAC to have acted in a seriously corrupt fashion. Here's the bit, though. This took the best part of years for them to make the decision, and they still haven't said whether there would be any criminal charges that will make their way anyway before a public prosecutor. Now, Amanda, obviously, as the Assistant Attorney General, limits on what you can say here. But what about the process here? It's taken them years to conclude what was obvious when the hearings were being held, and even then they won't say if they'll hand anything to a prosecutor.
Yeah, and yet those on the Labor and Greens and Independent side of Parliament would institute this very model for our federal Parliament. There can be no justice provided by a body like this in circumstances where it takes so damn long. These people's actions are sort of not even in the rearview mirror anymore by the time ICAC's done its thing. And if they can't get to the point where there's any kind of clarity about criminality, then you've got to wonder what the point is. Either it is only capable of smears, but never of referring for criminal action, in which case that's unacceptable. And if they're going to take as long as they do, well, you know, let's get to the point where the matter's actually resolved in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, the reality is the length of this process, we're not talking about war crimes in The Hague, all right? And I'm letting you off the hook by talking about all the cultural this, that and the other, right? Here's the deal. How does it take this long to conclude what was blatantly obvious the first time we heard the story? And why weren't there any charges suggested today?
I don't know why it's taken so long, but I support the work of the ICAC. I think it's pretty important that they are given proper resources to do their job, and importantly that they do it in public. And you know, these hearings and these findings were tough for the Labor Party, but the Australian people and the voters deserve to know what's going on. And these will now be handed to the Director of Public Prosecutions. They've got to make up their mind about whether or not they charge him and they believe that they can produce a criminal conviction. But I think it's pretty important that this does go on in public and that people do get to see how this evidence is produced. And that's why we want to see this similar system instituted at a federal level. Under the government's proposal, some of this would have occurred behind closed doors. We may not have produced findings like this. And there's been a corrupt finding, and I think that the public deserve the right to know that.
Yeah, and that's fine for the upper house MP who's stone cold, obviously, crossed the line. But Holly, what about the former boss of the New South Wales Labor Party who gave up, who was pushed out of their job, two of the former General Secretaries of the New South Wales Party, neither of which were found to be corrupt. So they are the perfect examples of what's wrong with the public dragging of everyone's name when people who didn't act corruptly lose their job.
Yeah, and same thing happened to Mike Gallagher.
Correct.
And I think it was about 8 years that it took for them to eventually clear Mike Gallagher. It's an absolutely disgraceful system. Oh, and Griner. Yeah, it's disgraceful in the way it conducts itself. And the fact that the ALP and the Greens are trying to push this sort of star chamber is ridiculous. But what I am more interested in to see a little bit more investigation around is this Chinese billionaire who has allegedly contributed the $100,000 in cash in the now infamous Audi bag is also the person who allegedly has funded the Chris Bowen and Chris Bowen's wife trip to China.
Correct.
And this all occurred after Sam Dastyari made the comments around the South China Sea and had his own issues about his alignment with China. I think Chris Minns got a bit of a grilling. Chris Bowen seemed to skate right under that radar, but I noticed both of the Chris's were in the photo around the article today of the dinner where this money was allegedly raised. So,
I'm with you.
It's extraordinary to think that someone who is currently sitting as a shadow minister for the Labor Party has this sort of potential influence hanging over his head.
Okay.